Hello, good morning, everybody. I would like to very warmly welcome you together with my co-moderator, Elisabetta Balzi, to the first part of the session dedicated to RNI actions, the topics that will lead us towards the destination of fair, healthy, and environmentally friendly food systems from primary production to consumption. So my name is Kerstin Rosenow. So I lead the unit in DG Agriculture and Rural Development on research and innovation. So we have a main focus on the part of the primary production systems. And together with my colleague and friend Elisabetta Balzi, who is leading the Healthy Oceans and Seas unit in DG RTD, we will moderate this session today. In this session, we will give an overview of the intervention logic of the destination, in particular the call Horizon CL6 2021 Farm to Fork 01. So, I mean, we're looking very much forward to have this session as interactive as possible. This is really for you. It's an info day for you. So please profit from this occasion that you have everybody there, that you can ask all the questions you'd ever wanted to prepare excellent proposals that we're very much going to be looking forward to. So this is really key that we get your questions, and we will receive these via Slido. So I'll just use a minute very quickly to explain to you how this will actually be done. So during the session, we would like to invite you from all over Europe to ask your questions. And you can also upvote the questions which you consider most interesting. So if you don't have any yourself or you want to promote your own, so please vote also for the question that you think we should really treat urgently in first. So to access Slido, what you need to do, you should normally, most of you will know this, go to www.sly.do. You insert the hashtag CL6InfoDay to join the event, and then select the room of the destination 2, so fair, healthy, and environmental friendly food system from primary production to consumption, or, which is usually much more simple, you can just simply scan the QR code and select the appropriate room. To facilitate our moderation of the questions you ask, it would really be great if you give us an indication which topic you're dedicating your question to. So before asking the questions, really clearly tell us which topic is it about. For example, if you're interested in aspects related to the topic Horizon CL6 2021 Farm to Fork 0104. So this would be the tackling outbreaks of plant pests. Then please put the topic identifier Farm to Fork 0104 and your question. That will be much easier for us then to make sure that we redirect your question to the right person. So we will take as many questions as possible given the time. However, if due to time constraints, some questions will remain unanswered, or you think of them only later, so because you reread the topic after this session, then please send them to the Research Inquiry Service. So we will reply there in written to all the questions. So it is really key that you get answers to all your questions. The most relevant ones, or those that are, let's say, most popular, will also be included in the FAQ section. So you could always go to that one as well. So during the session, we will favor questions related to the topics now, because general questions related to cluster 6, for instance, on evaluation or proceedings, they should have already been replied to in the plenary session. So now, after some housekeeping and some procedural issues, we go a little bit further into the content. So what is our agenda for you this morning? We will be presenting to you topics under the destination Farm to Fork. The topics under the destinations are grouped under 4 main headings that also indicate their common objective. And those are, first, enabling sustainable farming. Second, enabling sustainable fisheries and aquaculture. Third, transforming food systems for health, sustainability, and inclusion. And four, target international cooperation. Excuse me. At this session, the colleagues will be preparing I'll just try to catch my breath. So at this session, the colleagues will be presenting to you shortly the 11 2021 topics in 3 batches related to mostly the primary production part of the food systems that shall enable sustainable farming and enable sustainable fisheries and aquaculture. So the second part of the call, additional 8 topics, will be presented in the afternoon and will focus on topics that relate to the challenges facing the downstream of the food chain, the food system as a whole, and the global transition. So for instance, targeted international cooperation. After each batch of topics, 2 to 4, we will open the Q&A discussion. So now you may ask, why the destination? Why these headings and why these topics? So let me explain the intervention logic starting from the policy priorities. So national, EU, and global food systems are facing sustainability challenges. So really on the 3 areas of sustainability, so social, economic, and environmental, from primary production to consumption, that could jeopardize food and nutrition security. So therefore, the farm to fork strategy, which is key to the success of the European Green Deal and achievement of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, aims to support the transition to food systems that are sustainable in all 3 dimensions, like I've just said. At the heart of the farm to fork strategy are the new common agriculture policy and the common fisheries policies, with ambitious objectives to enable sustainable primary production, agriculture, fisheries, and aquaculture. Excuse me. Research and innovation are key drivers steering and accelerating the transition to sustainable self, health, and inclusive food systems from farm to fork, thereby ensuring food and nutrition security for all. Also in the new CAP, cross-cutting objective, this is really key. So knowledge exchange, innovation, and digitalization are a key role, so they're key drivers to achieve all the 9 specific objectives of the new CAP. But today we're not starting from scratch. We have recognized the role of RNI already a while ago, when we have set our RNI priorities in the long-term strategic approach to EU agricultural RNI. In addition, there's also the newly adopted strategic guidelines for sustainable and competitive EU aquaculture, as well as the Food 2030 initiative. So following the EU and RNI priorities, one of the 6 expected impacts for cluster 6 that we have set in the first Horizon Europe strategic plan 21 and 24 reads as follows. Excuse me. Food and nutrition security for all within planetary boundaries is ensured through knowledge and innovation, digitalization in agriculture, fisheries, aquaculture, and food systems, which are sustainable, resilient, inclusive, safe, and healthy from farm to fork. So this expected impact included in the strategic plan has been directly translated into the cluster 6, destination fair, healthy, and environmentally friendly food systems from primary production to consumption. And this call corresponds to the destination. So this call is expected to contribute to the following impact areas of the strategic plan, in particular, sustainable food systems from farm to fork, on land and sea, but also climate change mitigation and adaptation, really key. This is a transcendental topic, which is really key for everything that we do. Enhancing ecosystems and biodiversity on land and in water, good health and high quality accessible healthcare, clean and healthy air, water and soil, a resilient EU prepared for emerging threats, and inclusive growth and new opportunities. So this is a little bit to give you an oversight and how all of this fits together and what is the red thread actually that we're pursuing to the topics. Now I hand over to Elisabetta and I can take a breath. So sorry for the coughing, but I've been a bit retained by a cold, who will also explain to you a bit more the expected impacts and has a couple of more issues to make or points to make for the introduction. Elisabetta, the floor is yours.
Many thanks, Kerstin. Many thanks. Good morning to everybody. So as Kerstin already anticipated, in this destination, we have some important impacts which are defined in the strategic plan. And we have unpacked and specified these impacts into several specific expected impacts for the topics. And you know that the impacts are very important characteristics of our topics and also very important criteria in the evaluation of the proposals. So the proposals for topics under this destination should set out a credible pathway to fair, healthy, safe, climate and environment-friendly, resilient food systems from primary production to consumption, ensuring food and nutrition security for all within planetary boundaries in the EU and globally. And more specifically, to one or several of the following expected impacts specified in the destination. So there is a series of specific impacts, and these are first, a sustainable, productive, climate neutral and resilient farming systems, providing consumers with affordable, safe, traceable, healthy and sustainable food while minimizing pressure on ecosystems, restoring and enhancing biodiversity, improving public health, and generating fair economic returns for farmers. This is the first very important expected impact. Second important expected impact is to support sustainable fisheries and aquaculture, increasing aquatic biomatic production, diversification and consumption of seafood production for fair, healthy, climate resilient and environment-friendly food systems with low impact on aquatic ecosystems and high animal welfare. And one more important impact is to contribute to sustainable, healthy and inclusive food systems, delivering co-benefits for climate mitigation and adaptation, environmental sustainability and circularity, sustainable healthy nutrition, safe food consumption, food poverty reduction, the inclusion of marginalized people, and the empowerment of communities and flourishing business. Please note that in each topic there is a link established between the expected outcomes of the projects and the political priorities, as well as expected impacts specified in the destination. So this is a very important characteristic to keep in mind when preparing the proposals. In the next slide, we see a breakdown of under the different headings of this destination, a breakdown of the topics and also of the budget. And as mentioned by Kerstin at the beginning, following the specific expected impacts in the destination, the topics under this call have been organized under 4 corresponding headings. First is dedicated to enabling sustainable farming. Here we have 9 topics with a budget of 72 million euros. The second heading is dedicated to enabling sustainable fisheries and aquaculture with 2 topics and 20 million euros. Third heading is transforming food systems for health, sustainability and inclusion with 6 topics and 70 million euros. And the EU also aims to promote a global transition to sustainable food systems, targeted research and innovation activities, in particular under the EU-Africa Partnership on Food and Nutrition Security and Sustainable Agriculture, and global initiatives involving international research consortia. These will contribute to this international ambition. Here we have 2 topics with 24 million euros under the 4th heading, which is entitled Targeted International Cooperation. So altogether, we have 186 million euros, which are to be spent on this call in total in 2021. As far as the type of actions are concerned, you see that the majority are research and innovation actions, but there are also 5 innovation actions and 2 coordination and support actions. Now we would like to invite you to listen to the specific presentations done by our colleagues on the first series of topics with research and innovation activities. Please use Slido to ask your question and indicating the topic number. Following the presentations, we will then open a question and answer session, and we will reply to your question. Please also upvote the questions so that we can select the ones which are of most interest to all. And if Kerstin is back fine, I would like to give her the floor to introduce the first batch of topics.
Yeah, thanks, Elisabetta. So I hope that my voice will hold at least through the first batch. So let's try. Yeah, so thanks a lot. I would now like to invite my colleague, Susana Gaona-Saez, to shortly present to us the first batch of topics that aim to unlock the potential of agroecology, including organic farming, as well as the EU planned protein production. So there are 3 topics that she's going to present to us. The first one, the 01, so don't forget the identifier when you actually ask the question to us. In Slido, reaching the farm to fork target, RNI scenarios for boosting organic farming and organic aquaculture in Europe. Then the 02, developing sustainable and competitive land-based protein crop systems and value chains. And then the 03, digitalization as an enabler of agroecological farming systems. So these 3 will be presented, and then we'll hopefully receive your questions. So Susanna, the floor is yours.
Reaching the farm to fork targets, research and innovation scenarios for boosting organic farming and organic aquaculture in Europe. This is a research and innovation action under Destination 2 of Cluster 6. So projects funded under this topic are expected to contribute to the objectives set under the European Green Deal, and notably the farm to fork and biodiversity strategies, which call for boosting organic farming in the EU and set the target of at least 25% of the EU's agricultural land under organic farming by 2030, and a significant increase in organic aquaculture. The projects will also contribute to support the implementation of the action plan for the development of organic production in the EU. And in terms of the expected outcomes, projects are expected to contribute to all the following ones: to provide robust evidence on the socioeconomic scenarios and market analysis of organic farming, so covering both crops and livestock, and aquaculture and food systems for reaching this target; improved exchange of knowledge and best practices, and increased availability of advisory services and capacity building, leading to an innovation ecosystem that is fit to support the achievement of this target. In addition, increased and coordinated research and innovation investments in the organic sector. And lastly, support for the implementation of the Common Agricultural Policy, the EU organic farming regulations, and the action plan for the development of the organic sector in the EU. In terms of the scope, the funded projects are expected to cover the following activities: to analyze the uptake of organic farming and aquaculture across Europe and the reasons for the varied uptake. In addition, to evaluate the constraints, the lock-ins, enabling environment for reaching the targets, to build scenarios of expected increase, analyzing socioeconomic impacts for producers and also for other market players. So really undertake a foresight exercise. In addition, to assess the knowledge needs of the different actors for enhancing innovation, to promote capacity building and sharing of knowledge and best practices among producers and other actors. And lastly, to promote cooperation among research and innovation actors, leading to a more efficient research and innovation ecosystem for organic production. So points that are important to bear in mind for this topic is that this is a multi-actor topic. Therefore, projects must ensure a value chain approach with adequate involvement of the organic farming and aquaculture sectors. Also that collaboration with other projects and initiatives under Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe is expected. And lastly, that the topic requires the effective contribution of social sciences and humanities disciplines. Last but not least, the indicative budget per project is 4 million euro and the total budget is 4 million. Thank you for your attention. My name is Susana Gaona. I'm a research program officer in DG Agriculture of the European Commission. I'm going to introduce to you the topic developing sustainable and competitive land-based protein crop systems and value chains. This is an innovation action under Destination 2 of Cluster 6. So projects funded under this topic are expected to contribute to the Farm to Fork strategy objective of a transition to a fair, healthy, and resilient EU agricultural sector. In particular, the goal of fostering EU-grown plant proteins in line with the report on the development of plant proteins in the EU. So the funded projects are expected to contribute to all the following outcomes: identification of the most suitable regional and local transition paths for stimulating sustainable, resilient, and economically viable land-based protein crop production for food and for feed. Improve the evidence of the social, economic, environmental, climate, and health benefits and the costs of increasing land-based protein crops production. To improve farmers' capacities to cultivate land-based protein crops through innovative advisory tools, improved and wider exchange of knowledge and best practice, and adoption of sustainable crop rotation practices, and collaboration with other actors in the value chain. And lastly, stronger innovation ecosystem for land-based protein crop development through multi-stakeholder and transdisciplinary collaboration and networking. In terms of the scope, the funded projects are expected to cover all the following activities. So identify transition paths and develop strategies for regional protein-based crop systems for food and feed, to analyze benefits, cost, and industrialization feasibility, to analyze the impact of climate change and contribution towards climate resilient farming of these protein crops, to develop a method for data collection that allows economic environmental assessment, to document farmer support needs, so meaning advice, knowledge, and best practice sharing, etc. Also to set up a European-wide network for sharing of knowledge and best practice, and also set up regional multi-stakeholder networks for knowledge and best practice sharing, experimentation, and demonstration. Important to bear in mind is that projects should look at the complementarity and imbalances across regions, to cover the diversity of protein crop species with crude protein content of more than 50%, and consider conventional agroecological and organic farming systems in all European climatic regions. Important to bear in mind is that this is a multi-actor topic, so therefore projects must ensure an adequate involvement of farmers and all other relevant actors in the value chain. Also, the collaboration with other projects funded under Horizon Europe is expected, and that the expected TRL level at the end of the project is between 5 and 8. Lastly, the indicative budget per project is 9 million euro with a total budget of 9 million. Thank you. My name is Susana Gauna. I'm a research program officer in DG Agri of the European Commission. I'm going to introduce to you the topic digitalization as an enabler of agroecological farming systems. So this is a coordination and support action under Destination 2 of Cluster 6. On the policy context, projects funded under this topic are expected to contribute to the objectives of the Farm to Fork strategy to transition to a fair, healthy, and resilient farming sector. And in this regard, it's objective to promote agroecology. Activities will also contribute to the goal of making digitalization an enabler of more sustainable farming practices. And the funded projects is expected to contribute to all the following outcomes. So improve the evidence of digital tools and technologies that specifically support agroecology, and this for different crops, farming systems, and pedoclimatic conditions. Also to improve the understanding of various drivers, risks, and usability aspects of these tools. Achieve greater awareness of cost effectiveness and performance of these digital tools and the barriers and incentives for uptake and deployment. And last but not least, define pathways to address research and innovation needs of digital tools that support specifically the transition to agroecology. In terms of the scope, the funded projects are expected to deliver on the following activities. So develop a roadmap for research and innovation on digital technologies to support productivity and sustainability performance of agroecological farming systems, to build a repository of available digital tools that address the specific needs of agroecological farming systems, to evaluate the specific needs and implementation capacity for agroecological management at the farm, territorial, and regional national level. In addition, to look at the potential to adapt standard digital technologies and the need to develop new ones, to evaluate the cost effectiveness and performance of solutions proposed, to analyze barriers and incentives for the uptake and deployment of these tools, to pay attention to security in the use of data, interoperability and usability, and last but not least, to cover different crops and farming systems in different pedoclimatic zones, including also organic farming. So important to bear in mind about this topic is that this is a multi-actor topic, therefore projects must ensure a value chain approach with adequate involvement of the farming sector. Also important to know is that collaboration with other projects funded under this work program is expected. And lastly, that proposals should ensure that any data produced in the course of the project comply with the FAIR principles. Lastly, the indicative budget per project is €2 million with a total budget of 2 million. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Susanna. I think that was very clear and to the point. And I'm very glad also that I see that we have questions coming in already. So we want to have a really active morning session. So this is really good. So Susanna, you will be busy replying to us. Don't forget, this is your chance now to get all the information you need to prepare the best proposal as of now. So to the first topic, so thanks a lot also, well done. So indicating to us so clearly which topic you're referring to. This is perfect. So first one, to the first, so to 01, how do you expect projects to cover both organic farming and also organic aquaculture? Susanna, please.
Thank you, Kerstin, and good morning, everybody. Also, thank you to the participants for the question. As you may have seen, this topic is really about the target relevant for organics set under the Farm to Fork strategy. And this one concerns not only an increase in the percentage of agricultural land devoted to organic in the EU, but also a significant increase in organic aquaculture. So the topic is really geared towards increasing to really developing a foresight and developing socioeconomic scenarios of how this increase in both sides can be tackled. So it makes sense in our perspective to look at it together, because there can be synergies there can be trade-offs, there can be things that need to be looked at instead of separately, really together. So that's what I can say about the foresight part. It really makes a lot of sense to do it together. The other part of the topic is maybe more about innovation ecosystem, about increasing synergies in investments, etc. In that regard, perhaps projects or proposals could consider maybe dealing with it in separate work packages, but this is of course up to each proposal and consortium to consider how to best deal with that. But yeah, it makes really a lot of sense to look at the two types of production together, because it's a unique target, so it has to be done in synergies. Thank you.
Okay, great, Susanna. I think that was very clear. Thanks a lot. So we move to the second topic, I think. The first question we have a lot, we see. So the topic mentions production for food and feed, but there's no mention of activities for food and feed product development. Can this also be done, Susanna, under the topic?
Thank you, Kerstin. Indeed, the topic does not mention that aspect, because really that's not really the focus of the topic. If you look at it, it's really very much focused on primary production, really on fostering further and increasing the production of EU land-based protein crops for food and feed. So it's really very much focused on helping farmers, on developing the innovation ecosystem for helping this development to happen. But of course, if you see among the activities, there is something that relates a little bit to the question, the way I understand it. It's also one of the things that projects have to do is really to analyze the benefits, the cost, and the industrialization feasibility. So if that relates to the question, it's one aspect that could be looked at, but it's not the focus. Developing new products is not the focus of this particular topic. I hope it's clear.
Yes, I think very clear, Susanna. So the next one, still we're within the same topic. According to the Cluster 6 work program, only one project will receive funding. Could you please confirm that? That will be quick, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Kirsten. Indeed. There is the total budget for this topic is 9 million, and the expected budget that we consider for project is 9 million. So it's clear that we will only fund one project here.
Okay, now next one, still the same topic. The topic provides a list of protein crops, plants. Could a project work with other crops that are not listed in there, Susanna?
Thank you, Kirsten. Yes, indeed. The list provided, I think, in the footnote, it's not a closed list. If you see there is an etc. at the end. So it's just to give examples of types of crops that can be covered, but the condition, and this is in the text of the topic, is that the crops need to have a crude protein content of more than 15%. And this is fully in line with the report on the development of plant proteins in the EU, which sets also the priority in that threshold. So yeah, you can cover more than the ones indicated in the footnote, but that's the condition. It has to be with a crude protein content of more than 15%. So that's the condition.
So then we have a more general question. So here I see so many topics seem to relate to intervention area 3. What topics are linked to intervention area 3 to involve EIP agri-operational groups as requested by the multi-actor approach? So this is a little bit a general question. So there are, I mean, the topics that are labeled multi-actor are clearly labeled as such in the work program. But I think, as Susanna mentioned, I mean, she can clearly, let's say, for her part, point out again which ones are multi-actor projects. And for those one, of course, the involvement of EIP operational groups will always be considered an asset. So please, Susanna.
Thank you, Kirsten. That's also quite quick because all the three topics I presented this morning are multi-actor. So they must have a multi-actor approach and ensure the involvement of not only farmers, but also the relevant actors in the value chain. So the three of them are multi-actor.
Yes, so there is really an emphasis and also involving practice and making sure that we have something which is available for application on the ground. So now we move to your third topic, Susanna. So there we have a question which is, shall the digital tools assessed in the proposals cover only primary production, or shall they cover the whole value chain?
Thank you. Yes, indeed, it's a relevant question because, as you have seen, it's a topic really that is going to focus on gathering the knowledge and identifying the needs for really increasing the support of digitalization, digital tools to further develop agroecology, which is a specific approach to farming. And as you may have seen in the description of the topic, we have kind of an explanation of what we understand by agroecology. We also give the 10 elements of FAO on agroecology, internationally accepted, let's say. So there, indeed, agroecology, in that sense, it's focused on primary production, but not only. It also has a value chain approach, and the objective is to assess and to assess the tools that can not only support the uptake of agroecological practices at the farm level, but also other important aspects that are also important in order to further develop agroecology, which are, for instance, the relationship between farmers and consumers, and among other actors of the value chain. So indeed, it would be interesting to see the whole span of tools and digital tools that can help agroecology, fostering agroecology, but not only focusing really on the primary production, not only on agriculture per se, but really looking at with the food chain, a value chain approach. So that's the idea.
Okay, thanks a lot, Susanna. Very clear. So these were the questions that we had for you today. So I'm very happy to see that we have such an active discussion. So we hope we can continue in that spirit. This is exactly what we were looking for, and I hope you too. So now we move to the second batch of topics to be presented to you. So we basically move to the plants and the animals now. I would like to invite Gisela Quaglia and Jean-Charles Cavit to shortly present the second batch of topics that aims to enhance plant and animal health and welfare. So the topics that we will be presenting to you the 04, so for the Slido questions, tackling outbreaks of plant pests, the 05, animal welfare 2.0, taking animal welfare to the 2.0 level, and then 06, vaccines and diagnostics for priority animal diseases. So please, Gisela and Jean-Charles, the floor is yours.
So I will present tackling outbreaks of plant pests. That is a research and innovation action. The policy context of this call is the European Green Deal priorities and the Farm to Fork strategy for a transition to fair, healthy and resilient European agriculture and forestry, including the ambitious target of chemical pesticide reduction by 2030 on 50%. So the project results are expecting to contribute to the following expected outcomes: to find adequate responses to EU quarantine plant pests, to enhance capacities to prevent, monitoring and control important plant pests, and to support to relevant EU and associate countries' plant health policy. The indicative budget for this call is 7 million euros per project, with a total amount of 14 million euros for the topic. Moving to the next slide, following the definition of pests from the EU legislation, the proposals should target one or more plant pests that are either Union quarantine plant pests present in the EU or Union quarantine pests which are priority pests in the EU. In a nutshell, proposals should contribute to the understanding of the drivers of spread and establishment of the plant pests, improve methods and strategies for early detection, surveillance and control of pests, to extend the range of tools for integrated pest management, and to analyze socioeconomic implications and ecological impact of plant pest spread and establishment. Important aspect to consider: proposal must implement the multi-actor approach, including a range of actors such as researchers, plant health services and farmers or foresters. International cooperation with countries affected by the same pest is strongly encouraged. Proposals should consider both conventional and organic sector, and a possible GRC participation is described in this call.
Hello. I'm happy to be able to give you some insight today on a topic part of the work program of Cluster 6 and the destination Farm to Fork. And this is the topic Farm to Fork 0105 on Animal Welfare 2.0. And this topic is a research and innovation action. Let's give a little insight on the policy context for this topic. Well, it's part of the Farm to Fork destination. In general, the impact is to facilitate the transition to healthy and environmentally friendly food systems from primary production to consumption. So the policy context is very much about the European Green Deal priorities, in particular the Farm to Fork strategy for a transition to a resilient, healthy, fair livestock production system. So it's a topic focused on livestock. And this includes the improvement of animal welfare and the reduction of antimicrobial usage. Clearly, if there is no quantitative target like the reduction of antimicrobials, sales of antimicrobials, until 2030, which is in the Farm to Fork strategy, there is no such quantitative target for animal welfare, but animal welfare clearly is in the center with a revision and a review of the animal welfare regulatory framework at EU level that is ongoing now. For this topic, we've looked into, and we called it Animal Welfare 2.0, because very much the scope is on systems and data collection and monitoring of animal welfare. So there is a lack so far of animal welfare data exploitation along the production chain. Data are collected here and there in different systems, on farm, in other places, but really an overall systemic approach on animal welfare data collection and exploitation is not yet there. The expected outcomes, they are presented here. They are about improving the capacity to evaluate and monitor the state of animal welfare in a region, a country, or in relation to a group of operators. It's about enhancing the capacity to further improve animal welfare by business operators and all decision makers through provision of best practices and innovative tools. And finally, enhancing the capacity to integrate the environmental and socioeconomic impact of the proposed practices and innovation. Further information on the topic before going to the scope. First, the indicative budget, 8 million euros for an overall budget under this topic of 8 million, which means we expect to have one project selected. It's a multi-actor approach topic, which means we want to have the users, very important. You will hear about the scope, and it's clear that users, be it veterinarians, decision makers, operators, are important to design and to implement this project. And there are also criteria that are proposed for choosing which operators and which data to be studied. So the scope of this topic is reasonably long, but from the different bullets, I think it's quite clear that the center of gravity is on data collection and exploitation. So the first one is identification of the data and appropriate indicators on farms during transport and at the time of slaughtering or killing. Developing innovative ways of automatically collecting data. Standardizing as much as possible data collection, and developing algorithms integrating heterogeneous data. Next to this, the idea is also to develop best practices associated with statistically meaningful improvement in animal welfare, and evaluating the environmental and socioeconomic impacts of these best practices. Finally, the topic is about the development of monitoring tools and smart models to improve the scope of the data collection, both quantitatively and qualitatively. And finally, the development of innovative ways to estimate the impact of past detrimental conditions on welfare. So this makes it a quite encompassing topic, very much centered on data system for monitoring of animal welfare along the food chain and destined to different types of users, be it policymakers or operators. Thank you. Oh, my name is Jean-Charles Cavit. I work in DG Agriculture and Rural Development. I work as Research Policy Officer in the Research and Innovation Unit. And I'm happy to give you some insight today on a topic that is part of Cluster 6 work program for 2021. And this topic is about livestock. It's part of the destination Farm to Fork, and its reference is Farm to Fork 0106 for 2021. And it's about vaccines and diagnostics for priority animal diseases. Important to note, this is an innovation action. The policy context and the overall impact, this is a topic that is part of this destination on a transition to healthy and environmentally friendly food systems from primary production to consumption. The policy context, therefore, is very much on the European Green Deal priorities, and in particular, the Farm to Fork strategy for a transition to fair, healthy, and resilient livestock production systems, including, in particular, the objective set for 2030 to reduce by 50% the sales of antimicrobials, which means reduction in the use, consequently, of antimicrobials in livestock production in particular. This topic is about vaccines and diagnostics, which are essential component of the toolbox for disease prevention and control, and therefore for the potential reduction of antimicrobial usage. If we can prevent the disease from entering a flock, from affecting an animal, then there will be no need for antimicrobials. And there we know that for a number of diseases and priority diseases, substantial effort still need to help policymakers and relevant actors in the prevention and control of infectious animal diseases. So the expected outcomes are quite clear, I think. It's a enhanced capacity to prevent and control priority diseases through the provision of innovative tools and products. And those tools and products are pilot vaccines or improved vaccines and diagnostics. And it's also about the underpinning knowledge, the science behind the development of these vaccines or diagnostics. So an increased knowledge of virulence factors, of mechanisms of infection and protection, obviously, are important areas of work for this topic and the project to be selected. Now, what is the scope for this topic? Again, quite clear from the title, it's about an improvement in vaccines and related domains. So it's about vaccine technologies and products, pilot vaccines themselves or improved vaccines, including, we mentioned in the scope, the feasibility of vaccine production based on existing or novel vaccine platforms. Again, improvement in the underpinning knowledge on infection and protection mechanisms, and the diagnostics related to the vaccines which are to be improved or developed, like in particular DIVA diagnostics and DIVA vaccine, which goes together with DIVA vaccines. These are requirements. Then we mention in the scope that it's recommended to work on diagnostics in general, not necessarily only those related to the vaccines on which the proposals and the project will work, but possibly other diagnostics. And we mentioned, for example, for instance, the antimicrobial susceptibility testing or point of care and multi-pathogen diagnostic tools, where improvements would certainly be helpful. But this is recommended. So it's not a requirement, it's a recommendation for this part. The budget for this topic, the overall budget is 12 million euros, and we mention an indicative budget per project of 6 million euros. So we expect, in principle, to get 2 projects, at least under this topic, 2 projects selected. Important aspects to keep in mind, this topic is about terrestrial livestock and, where relevant, depending on the disease, the relevant wildlife. But it's about terrestrial animals, not about aquatic animals. There are indications in the topic texts of sources and criteria for prioritization, because the topic is about priority diseases, and there are elements that can be used for the applicants to think about which disease to mention. We give examples of, in particular, 3 diseases. It's not exhaustive, but these are those that we have in mind together with some other possibilities. About the details on this topic, the indicative budget for this topic altogether is 12 million euros, and per proposal, per project, the indicative EU contribution is 6 million euros. So you understand that we expect, in principle, 2 projects to be selected under this topic. Some aspects to keep in mind, important aspects. The topic is about terrestrial livestock, and where relevant, depending on the disease addressed or diseases addressed, wildlife. But it's about terrestrial livestock. We don't intend to address aquatic animals with this topic. There are mentioned in the topic sources and criteria for prioritization of diseases. Indeed, this topic is about priority diseases. So there are different elements that can help the applicant to decide and select diseases that they wish to address, or check that their ideas fit with the sources and criteria we have mentioned. This topic is an innovation action where projects are expected to achieve a technology readiness level of 6 to 7, which means really translational research, applied research, and that's why we recommend and strongly recommend the participation of industry to ensure that we go as far as possible in the exploitation of the results. We also welcome international research cooperation where relevant, in particular with countries, in particular non-EU countries, that would be affected by the disease, and where research entities or actors could bring really knowledge of the situation, could bring added value to the projects addressing such diseases. A last aspect is that we have mentioned that the gender dimension is not mandatory under this topic. We felt that gender was not really relevant for the development of vaccines or diagnostics, so clearly gender dimension is not mandatory under this topic. So this is what I could say to bring some additional information or clarification on this topic, or present this topic in general, which is quite clear about vaccines and related diagnostics as a requirement, and potentially also other types of diagnostics. Thank you.
So thanks a lot, Gisela and Jean-Charles, for these extensive presentations. Maybe I should mention that we really have ample time for questions. So we normally plan for 30 minutes around questions and answers. So please also, as we go along, if you haven't submitted the questions by now, but you hear things that pop up in the discussions, please don't hold back. Please put in your questions, and even if you have something you think back later, we can maybe come back in the very end of the session. So we will be going to the questions to you now. So first of all, let's start with Gisela. So for the first question is for you. So on the 04 topic, do you support detection systems development for pests, or just prevention or methods to deal with the pests? Gisela, please.
So thanks, Kerstin, and thanks to the participant that raised this question. In fact, the rationale of this topic is to be prepared to tackle outbreaks of priority pests and relevant pests in the EU. So the early detection systems are included in the topic description, as well as the prevention and methods to control the pests under the integrated pest management. So I can say that yes, both things are included in these topics, and we expect proposals in this direction.
Thanks a lot, Gisela, very clear. So then we go to Jean-Charles. I would maybe take the question on topic 5 first. Then we can go to topic 6 and take those questions in a batch. So on 5, we got what is meant by best practices and what kinds of best practices are relevant for this topic?
Yeah. Thank you, Kerstin. I think the center of gravity of the topic is really on data management, data collection systems to monitor animal welfare. So these best practices by default would be around the systems put in place to monitor welfare and to monitor the state of welfare of animals along the chain. Now there can also be practices that we mentioned here for improving the conditions of welfare for, let's say, marketability reasons. I don't think we want to identify in the topic any specific example of best practices, but it's best practices that can be integrated in the systems to monitor animal welfare at different stages in the chain. So, and having indicators that can be used to contribute to this development of systems to monitor welfare.
Okay, thanks. Then we move to topic 6. There may be some other questions on 5 coming up in the meantime. So the first questions on topic 6 is vaccines, diagnostics for priority animals. Would it diseases? Would it be, I suppose, would it be better to target more than one disease in a single proposal, or just focus on one?
Yeah, I think the topic does not say really actually whether one or more diseases should be targeted. We provided criteria to choose the diseases and gave examples. Now I think it's at the principle up to the applicants to choose whether they want to go into a single disease or more than one disease, depending on the scope of the research they want to perform, the needed resources. So, I mean, there is no rule, but it's part of the justification and arguments that the applicants should use to explain why they target such disease or such disease in plural. So there is no requirements clearly set and mentioned. Now also look at the budget. We've mentioned that we have a budget that should allow to select more than one project. So that's maybe also an element to keep in mind that it's not a single project that we hope to be able to select. So just to repeat, there is no requirement to target more than one disease.
Okay, thanks. So then vaccines and diagnostics for priority animal diseases, what does TRL 6 to 7 mean for the stage of vaccine development?
Yeah, I guess, and I think that there is an annex, there are data and schemes available to define what technology readiness level means, and the gradient and the scale of technology readiness level. If I remember well, TRL 6 is a technology demonstrated in industrially relevant environment, and TRL 7 is a system prototype that is demonstrated in operational environment. So we target by the end of the project TRL 6 or 7.
Okay, Jean-Charles, thanks a lot. So again, on the same topic, is it possible to include both a priority disease and other diseases not declared as priority, but having a high socio-economic impact?
Yeah, I think by reading the topic text, we have different criteria and sources of information. And I think diseases with a heavy socioeconomic impact is part of the criteria that can be used to choose the diseases. So that's feasible, yes.
Okay, good, very clear and to the point. So then we have vaccines and diagnostics for priority animal diseases. Are antibody preventive treatments also included, for example, by addition to the feed?
Good question. I would have to say we mention specifically vaccines and diagnostics. So that's the way treatments can be understood as vaccines that can be used. So maybe there is a need to really look at the definition or regulatory definition for vaccines. Antibodies are clearly treatments. Whether they can be considered vaccines, it's a good question that I would need to dig into the issue and see whether this can be considered really as vaccine. I'm not completely sure that this can be accepted. It would have to be anyway justified in the proposals themselves.
Okay, thanks. Then we might be able to come back to that also in written to give a final reply to this. So then we have a clarification on what you have been explaining, Jean-Charles, about sex and gender. So there's a questioning of if this is really not relevant for the development of vaccines and diagnostics.
Yeah, by default, all the topics should address a gender dimension. And for some of the topics where we didn't want to oblige each and every applicant to look and address the gender dimension, sex and gender dimension, we considered that this topic was among those where we could say it was not an absolute requirement. Then I agree that for maybe some diseases that would be specific to certain genders of animals, then it may be needed to address it. So we don't say you must not address the gender dimension, but it's not automatic, an automatic requirement to address sex and gender dimension. So where relevant to the disease, maybe it could be important that in some cases you may have to vaccinate only one sex and not the other ones, for instance, so that can be targeted.
Okay, thanks a lot for that further clarification. So then a short question on the same topic still, are fish diseases included?
Well, in the presentation, I think it was clear that made clear that the topic is addressing terrestrial animals. So fish, aquaculture animals are not to be addressed under this topic, excluded.
Okay, then still on vaccines and diagnostics, should vaccines and related diagnostic for the same disease be combined in the same proposal, or is one of them enough?
Yeah. Again, I think the topic text is quite clear where we mention vaccines and related diagnostics as a requirement. So it's not one or the other, it's both. The other diagnostic that may not be related to vaccines can be addressed or not. This is a recommendation, it's not a requirement. But those diagnostics related to the vaccine that are addressed in proposals, they should be together. So DIVA diagnostics, for instance, should be part of proposals that address a vaccine related to this diagnostic.
Okay. Then we move back to now we have a bit of interrelated questions on a different topic. So then it's also good that Jean-Charles, you're very popular, but we break at a certain point with Gisela again. So we have now a question on 05. So we move to another proposal. What is the expected scope of improved data collection in terms of the quantity of production to be covered in a target population?
What is expected? I have some difficulty to understand the question. What is expected? The scope of improved data collection, the product to be covered in the target population. Quite frankly, I'm not sure I understand the question there. It's about 0105, scope of improved data collection in terms of the quantity of production to be covered.
You know what? We take the question for Gisela in the meantime, and then we can maybe try to make sense of this one. Or we ask the person who submitted it maybe to resubmit with another spin. Yeah. Okay. Then we go to Gisela in the meantime. So on your topic, on the plant-related one, what level of TRL is expected to achieve?
So thanks for the question. There is no indication on the topic text about the TRL expected for this topic. So as there is a combination of activities that go from basic research related to the spread and establishment of the pest to control and surveillance methods. So it's up to the applicants to define which TRL they will achieve in the different work packages, but it's a research and innovation action, so higher TRLs are not expecting for this topic.
Okay, thanks, Gisela, very clear. Huh? So then we move back to Jean-Charles. So we still have the last question, but then we could also take the next one already. So voila. So the proposal should improve an existing, so we're at 5 again. So the proposal should improve an existing system or design an entirely new data system for animal welfare. Is that what is targeted?
Yeah, I think both could be targeted. Now, having said so, my understanding is that as regards data collection on animal welfare, there is basically no real system, at least at EU level. There are some initiatives, private or public initiative in some countries or in some groups of operators, but there is no system. So it's one of the objectives of this topic on animal welfare to zero, to look at what is being available, where data are collected, what kind of data, what systems, and learn from this and consider how this could be further developed to bring into a possible feasible EU system of data collection on animal welfare. So in a way, depending what the situation is, and actually I'm not sure we know exactly what the situation is precisely in the different countries and different groups of operators, then there can be either adapting a system and broadening it, which could be part of a kind of innovation in this part, or possibly building a system. But to build a system, you also need the data. So they have to start with what data are there and what data are collected or can be collected in the near future by extending the process of monitoring. So question could be in both cases, again, the applicants have to justify their approach, their scientific approach, and that will be assessed at the moment of evaluation of the proposals.
Okay. Thanks a lot. And then last but not least, now we go back to 06 again. So the last one you presented, which kind of international cooperation is considered in this topic? So vaccines, diagnostics, or is it also possible to give some examples?
I'm not sure we are to give examples in this explanation, because by giving examples, we may focus on certain issues and not on other ones. What I can say is international cooperation on vaccine or diagnostic development, it's about addressing certain diseases that may be present in the EU or not, And if they are not present in the EU, we may need to use the information, data, specimens that are present in other countries beyond Europe. For certain diseases, we have the pathogen is present in the EU, but we may not have the same strain, let's say, of pathogen in the EU that we can face in other countries. But these other strains in other countries may be a threat for us. So a vaccine may target certain strain of pathogens, and these strains may or may not be present in the EU. So the use of the expertise specimens in non-EU countries can be very, very relevant to develop appropriate, maybe multivalent vaccines or vaccines targeting certain strains, and the diagnostic basically is the same issue. So this kind of international cooperation is expected, depending, of course, on the disease that the applicants will want to address. So if really an example has to be given, let's imagine the project would target African swine fever. We know that in Europe, we have genotype 2 in particular, spreading or present in the EU and actually globally. But there are many genotypes, and a number of them are in Africa. So if we develop a vaccine and we want to target more than genotype 2, it will be very relevant to look at what is available and what genotypes are there in other countries, like in Africa, for instance. So this is a kind of example, and the diagnostic would be the same issue.
Okay, thanks a lot, sir. I think that's much more clear now. Then we have now we go to Susanna. So we come back to some of the questions we had on the first three topics. So also please don't hesitate to put in further questions. So Susanna, here's also a question on the gender dimension with regards to your topic. So where is the gender dimension in the organic farming and agriculture?
Thank you, Kerstin, and also to the participant for raising this question. Well, the topic does not mention the gender dimension, but that means precisely that the factor needs to be considered. When we consider that it's not necessary to cover it, we indicate it in a specific sentence. And in this case, we didn't do that because the gender dimension needs to be considered. And it's very relevant, of course, for all farming, but in particular for organic, and for organic farming and aquaculture farming is essential. So it is de facto considered.
Now we come back to Jean-Charles, who had a short break to catch his breath in the meantime. So now here we are with another question to topic 6. Is it enough to show that the vaccine works experimentally in a clinical study or preparation for approval?
Yeah. I think, again, they have to look into what the TRL levels mean. But my understanding is that for TRL 6 to 7, even TRL 7 says basically the system prototype, let's say, should be demonstrated in operational environment. If we would have wanted to go beyond, like nearly preparation for marketing authorization, that would be a higher TRL level. The TRL level goes up to TRL 9, if I remember well. So it means we are not yet there at a level where the vaccine would be ready to be marketed or be ready to be submitted as a dossier for marketing authorization. We are at a slightly lower level.
Yes, so I think I will
No, I'm back. So
okay, back
should
to
be
you.
Okay. So, however, I don't see the question screen.
I can maybe take it if you want, Kerstin.
Yeah, please go.
There is a question on 0105, so animal welfare. What is expected TRL in this topic? If we did not put a TRL level, if we did not mention a TRL level in the topic, it's because we don't have a TRL level in mind. As I explained before, we start from a situation which is very dispersed, not very well known, and probably there are not so many systems that can be used. So it's building a more or less a system of existing data. So we could not really identify an expected TRL level by the end of the project that would be selected. That's why we don't have TRL level. So no expected TRL level mentioned in the topic.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So then next one, still on 06, please specify, are African swine fever or African horse sickness mandatory to be included?
No, I think people need to read the topic. These are given as examples in the topic, such as, and we mentioned those diseases. It's not completely by chance that those diseases are mentioned in the topic, but they are examples, and we have listed source of information, prioritization documents that can be used. So clearly, it's not mandatory to address African horse sickness or African swine fever.
Okay. You can, but you do. It's not a must.
Yeah.
So then we switch quickly back to Susanna on the gender dimension again. The first reply was that it is essential. So it seems that the question was more on what could be the gender dimension in the topic. Susanna, if you want to come in again.
Thank you, Kerstin. Yes, my reply was obvious because indeed I had understood it was the question was more about that there was no reference to the gender dimension in the topic, and I tried to explain that this is because when it's not indicated, it's because it's de facto considered and included and important. So how does it come in the topic and in the activities? Of course, when you develop the foresight and all the activities that are requested, you need to look at it with the gender lens, with the gender perspective. So really looking at it at the specificities of having a gender dimension in the activities. I think it's quite clear, like for other topics, and in this case, it's also important. In the case of organic farming, we know that this aspect is particularly relevant because there may be more women involved with organic farming, for instance. In the case of aquaculture, could be the same. So really is having the lens, the gender lens, when you design the activities. The foresight, so really looking at it with a gender disaggregated data, for instance. And in the case of the training activities or the enhancing the innovation ecosystem, also having a look at the gender dimension. So I think it's quite obvious. Then, of course, it's up to each proposal to see how to deal with it. I hope this helps a bit or answers.
Okay, thanks, Susanna. Then we have another question. So if I identify clearly, I think it's also linked to the same topic. So in addition to agri-ministries, what type of regulatory bodies or policymakers are foreseen across the farm to fork topics mentioning contribution to policies? So, I mean, this seems to be too many ones. Yeah, it's a general question. So, yeah, maybe you could start answering this for your topics, and then I give the floor quickly to the other ones. Susanna, do you want to go first?
I'm not sure I understand well the question. Maybe if the other colleagues want to go, because I understand it's a bit for everybody. It's related to the farm to fork, but I'm not sure if it's about my topic.
So in any topics, I suppose where in any of your topics, if there are one where regulatory bodies or policymakers are also part and parcel, then maybe we could take the floor. Otherwise, we could also put this to the part of the general questions, which we can reply to at the end.
Maybe I can. Well, maybe I can say something, and then Jean-Charles can also continue.
Yeah.
I mean, in the case of policymakers, or I think besides ministries at the national level, in the case of the particular topic on organic farming and aquaculture, I think it's also important to look at the regional and the more local dimension of policy making. So in this case, I think it would also be relevant also for the context specificity of the implementation of organic, in the case of organic farming, of organic practices. And in the case of aquaculture, I'm sure it's similar. So I would say for policymakers, I think it's important to consider other levels below the national level. That's what I could contribute.
Okay, then Gisela wanted to come in.
Yes, but I don't think that my camera is working, but regarding the regulatory bodies or for policy, in the case of plant health, it's good to interact with the national authorities that are dealing with the monitoring and the surveillance of quarantine pests. So in this sense, it's important.
Okay, thanks a lot. Then there are also colleagues I see that chip in later for other topics that could give a reply to those questions. But I think maybe it's better to take that when we have the topics coming up, and the colleagues can make a quick reference to them at that point in time.
Yeah, just
Jean-Charles, you too?
Yeah, just to say, well, it's quite clear, I think. The animal health and animal welfare landscape, let's say, is very much regulated. We have EU legislation on animal health with regulated disease, and the way you may or can or cannot use vaccines, for instance, depending on the diseases. The same for animal welfare. There are minimum rules that are implemented with a framework. So it's certainly important. At EU level, we have DG Santé, of course, but in the at the national level, you have the veterinary services, who are an important element of the use of diagnostics, the use of vaccines. And for diagnostics also, there are pieces of legislation about which reference methods you can use, or possibly the framework around kits. Now, also specifically for vaccines, kind of regulatory authorities are the European Medicines Agency that is there for the marketing authorizations of vaccines, for instance. So I think, and if we think of DIVA diagnostics accompanying the vaccines, also EMA has an important element, an important actor in the regulatory framework.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Jean-Charles. So for the moment, it seems that we have exhausted our questions on the first 6 topics that we had presented. So maybe at the very end, also one thing that came to my mind that I wanted to say on multi-actor, because we had a question there in relation to the topics that we have presented under the Farm to Fork area. But the multi-actor approach for this work program has also been mainstreamed to other parts of the work program. It's true that there are a lot of topics under intervention area 3, which are marked as multi-actor, but you will also find that in other parts of the work program. So that's maybe important to say. So then, if really I look to my good ghosts of Slido, is there any remaining questions that we have to clarify? If that is not the case, then I would propose that we now have a 15 minutes break for a well-deserved coffee for all of us. And then we would come back at 10:40 sharp and Elisabetta will take over to guide you through the remaining batches of topics that we have available for questions and answers. And don't hesitate, so if there's any other questions coming to your mind, as we've said, we can also reply to them to the research inquiry system at the end. Okay. Then a good break, and thanks to all the colleagues for giving us such in-depth and ample presentations, as well as really great answers to the questions replied, and to the audience for all the questions. So we hope we will be as active after the coffee break, or even more, as we had a coffee. See you back in 15 minutes. Bye-bye.
Welcome back to everybody. I hope you enjoyed your coffee. And now we would like to start with a presentation of our third batch of topics. And I would like to invite my two colleagues, Doris Marcar and Natalia Brezina, to shortly present this batch, which look into digital solution, particularly blockchain, and socio-economic research and innovation to support agri-food policies. So we have three topics on research and innovation roadmap for blockchain technologies in the agri-food sector. Number 8, uncovering lock-ins and levers to encourage farmers to move to and stay in climate neutral and sustainable food production systems, from experiments to systemic mechanisms. And the third topic is towards a new approach to assess and internalize positive and negative externalities of agri-food products for incentivizing sustainable choices. Doris and Natalia, the floor is yours.
For the blockchain technologies in agri-food sector, which is planned as coordination and support action under Horizon Europe Cluster 6 Destination 2. I'd like to note that this presentation is intended to raise interest in the topic and to provide a known comprehensive overview feasible for everyone. Legally binding information on this topic can be found in Horizon Europe work program for Cluster 6. Looking at the policy context on the next slide, this topic is expected to contribute, among others, to the headline ambitions of the Green Deal, to the farm-to-fork strategy in particular, the digital age, and the economy that works for people. More specifically, it is expected to support increased traceability and transparency in food supply chains and in the implementation of sustainability schemes, through the exploitation and development potential of the use of blockchain in the agri-food sector. The expected outcomes include, first, in the field of enhanced transparency and traceability in agri-food supply chains, also the green supply chains are to be covered. Further, a contribution to increasing competitiveness and market power of producers, including through smart contracts, is expected. Used transaction costs and administrative burden for both public and private actors through blockchain technologies and dedicated tools are to be fostered. Among the expected outcomes of this coordination and support action are also capacity building in research and innovation in the agri-food sector and the public administration for the development, assessment, and application of blockchain technologies, as well as excellence in research and innovation in blockchain technologies in the agri-food sector in Europe through networking of actors and initiatives. As you can see on the next slide, the overall indicative budget foreseen for this topic is €3 million, whereby the Commission estimates that an EU contribution of around €3 million would allow to address the outcomes thus introduced to be addressed appropriately. For potential applicants, it is important to know that legal entities established in known associated third countries may exceptionally participate in projects falling under this topic. The defined scope of the activities carried out under this topic is set as follows. The main aim of this CSA is the development of a research and innovation roadmap for blockchain technologies in the agri-food sector, including the following steps. First, mapping and assessing existing blockchain technologies and related European and international R&I activities, and promoting their coordination. Second, assessing the extent of application of blockchain technologies in the agri-food sector in the European Union and globally. Third, analyzing the needs for R&I on blockchain technologies. Fourth, identifying gaps, priority areas, and types of action for intervention. And finally, proposing methodologies to monitor and review a portfolio of blockchain technologies related R&I activities in the field of agri-food. Funded activities are expected to increase capacities, both technical and organizational, for implementing a major research and innovation program on blockchain technologies in the agri-food sector, including, beyond the earlier mentioned roadmap, improved coordination with existing activities in Europe and globally, and informed and supported development of policies. For further information on this topic, please see the Cluster 6 work program. The link is provided on the first slide.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Natalia Brzezina, and I work in the Research and Innovation Unit of DG Agri. It's my pleasure to present to you today the Research and Innovation Action on uncovering lock-ins and levers to encourage farmers to move to and stay in sustainable, climate-neutral, and biodiversity-friendly farming systems from experiments to systemic mechanisms. Although the EU has made progress in improving the sustainability of agriculture, substantial efforts are still needed to achieve the ambitious target of the Green Deal, in particular the Farm to Fork strategy and the objectives of the new CAP. And many approaches are emerging that have the potential to make farming systems more sustainable. However, there are multiple lock-ins that are preventing farmers from scaling up and out more sustainable production systems. So we expect that the projects will improve the understanding of the challenges and opportunities for the development of sustainable farming systems. They will improve the understanding of the farmers' individual and systemic lock-ins and levers for moving to and staying in sustainable farming systems. And they will improve the understanding of the behavior of consumers and other actors across the food systems and their role in hindering and facilitating the transition to sustainable farming systems. So this knowledge will then help to better design and implement relevant policies, in particular the Common Agriculture Policy, the Farm to Fork and the biodiversity strategies, etc. And they will also help to improve farm advice, business strategies and relationships that support and incentivize farmers to produce in a more sustainable manner. And last but not least, the project will enhance the capacities of researchers and behavioral economics and system thinking. All in all, the outcomes of these projects will deliver on the impacts of the destination. So they will enable sustainable farming systems. In terms of scope, the proposals should investigate farmers' behavior, analyze consumer preferences, decision-making and shopping behavior, in particular looking at market segmentation and willingness to pay versus the buying act. Also, analyze behavior of other food system actors and their role in hindering and incentivizing farmers' decision to take up sustainable practices, and consider also the whole food system in which farmers operate and analyze the mechanism, the systemic mechanism, structures, and dynamics. And in this analysis, please include diverse factors, also extensive experimental research, including nudges, and conduct the analysis in a variety of settings. And then, based on these insights, develop and disseminate policy recommendations and business strategies. Important to bear in mind is that the topic is flagged as SSH. GRC may participate in the project that will be selected, and we also encourage the projects to collaborate with other projects. Lastly, the indicative budget per project is 4 million euro, but the total budget is very substantial. It's 12 million euro. Thank you. It is my pleasure to present to you another research and innovation action towards an EU approach to assess and internalize positive and negative externalities of food for incentivizing sustainable choices. In the policy debate around the Green Deal, and in particular the Farm to Fork strategy, better internalization of externalities related to food has emerged as one of the many solutions for improving the access to sustainable food for consumers, and at the same time generating fair economic returns for sustainable producers. Nevertheless, there are pros and cons of such approach, and despite the growing research and interest around the concept, it remains still more theoretical than practical. So in terms of outcomes, we expect that the projects will lead to, first, better understanding of the challenges and opportunities in relation to putting the concept into practice. Second, to well-informed policy on the possible ways of steering decision-making towards sustainable choices. Third, to widespread use of improved and harmonized approaches to identify, measure, and value the impacts of food. And ultimately, better internalization of externalities of food that will then speed up the transition to sustainable farming and food systems on land and at sea. In terms of scope, the proposal should pilot a community of practice and convene policy dialogues, including a wide range of initiatives, actors, and viewpoints, scrutinize various approaches to identifying, assessing, and monetizing externalities of food, including both negative and positive externalities related to health, environmental, socio-economic impact, explore possible ways to improve, harmonize, and operationalize these approaches in practice, then map and analyze gaps in existing databases, and if the gap exists, then collect the necessary data to fill these gaps, then demonstrate the usefulness of the approaches in practice, and identify and analyze effectiveness of various possible strategies, options for elevating internalization of externalities and embedding this into decision making. And in all these activities, please take into account the diversity of products, processes, supply chains, and contexts. And then based on the generate insights, derive and widely disseminate recommendations and business strategies. Important to bear in mind is that the topic requires multi-actor approach. It is flagged as an SSH topic, and GRC may participate in the project. Last but not least, the indicative budget per the project is 8 million euro. So I would like to wish you good luck with the preparation of your proposals, and I'm happy to address any questions you might have in the following Q&A part. Thank you.
Many thanks to both Natalia and Doris. For this presentation, now we would like to take the questions by the participants that we received by Slido. And I would like to start here with Doris. And the question is, are existing RNI project holders on related topic allowed to be lead or be part of consortium for this funding for this topic?
Yes, thank you for that question. The CSA is normally intended to actually interlink existing initiatives. So from a legal point of view, it's probably not the same consortium, but organizations which are involved in one consortium already, for instance, in an existing Horizon 2020 project, and which may also demonstrate that they have pre-experience and in blockchain technologies and research and innovation in blockchain in the agri-food sector, can demonstrate it. So formally, it would be a new consortium, but still the organizations involved can for sure build up on their pre-experience. Thank you.
Many thanks, Doris. Then we have a couple of more questions. These are for Natalia. Will a generic proposal that takes into account several sectors or those with specific sectors and products be better evaluated?
Thank you very much for the question. I have to say that in the topic, it is specifically stated that the research should be conducted using the same or similar methods in a variety of settings representative of the diversity in the agri-food systems and conditions in the EU and associated countries. And here, for example, wide range of farm typologies, diverse farming systems, also diverse sectors, value chains, collective actions, regions and communities, and etc. So basically, we want then this project deliver results that you will be then able to derive many meaningful conclusions on the general validity of the decision-making, behavioral factors, and the systemic insights across the different contexts, basically. So it is very important to not look only at one specific sector, but really look at farming systems, at food systems, and try this in different settings and contexts for this topic. I hope it's clear.
Many thanks, Natalia. Very clear the importance of the system approach. Next question is, are also aquaculture farmers considered as farmers under this topic? It's the same topic of Natalia, so it's still for you, Natalia.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. So basically this topic, let's say in contrast to the 09, is dedicated to the terrestrial farmers, so farmers and mostly common agriculture policy. So of course, we look here into behavioral economics and looking at the different aspects within the food system and the mechanisms that will support primarily common agriculture policy, but it is not explicitly excluded. So what is not excluded could be in the proposal. However, yeah, we look mostly to support with this topic the common agriculture policy.
Thank you, Natalia. Still on this topic, no multi-actor approach is mentioned in this topic, which surprises me given the expected outcomes. Could you clarify?
Yes, thank you very much for this. Indeed, there is no multi-actor approach let's say, requested in this topic, because what we want there is mostly behavioral economics and behavioral experiments that will be on a very broad, let's say, done in this topic on a very broad scale. So really, we let's say give the attention to the research angle of this topic, and also to analyze the different systemic mechanisms, but not necessarily developing, let's say, innovative solutions that are for basically targeted some kind of needs of farmers. So basically, what we want is that it will be a research action, of course, involving the different actors in the discussion, because it is very important to do the studies that are requested in this topic. However, it is not required that you have to involve them as part of the consortium. Thank you.
Many thanks, Natalia. Then still for you, do you expect projects to include testing of potential solutions to help with adoption of sustainable agriculture approaches?
Yes, basically. So the answer is yes, because as I stated in the project that in the topic description, that basically we have made already some progress towards sustainability in agriculture. However, there are still substantial efforts needed, and there are emerging approaches that are out there that can actually help us to even more improve the sustainability of farming systems. And here, what we want you to do is to basically test what works and what does not work, basically, specifically looking at behavioral research and systemic research. I hope it clarifies. If not, then please maybe repeat the question.
Many thanks, Natalia. Then the last question is more general, I would say, to involve the JRC. Do we need to contact them and ask them for a letter of intent, or they will be contacted after proposal approval? I think this is also a general question, of course, specifically for this topic, because this topic specifies the participation by the JRC. In general, the principle is that in those topics where the JRC participation is mentioned, the JRC will join the winning consortia. So there is no need, the JRC will not participate in the proposals, but they will join after the selection. But Natalia, please feel free to complement in your specific case.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much. Indeed, this is the case. And basically, JRC expressed interest in this topic. So it is already, let's say, somehow predefined in which topics are actually flagged as interested for JRC. And their, let's say, rules are that you should not contact JRC at the stage of preparation of the proposals. So basically look only at the scope of the topic, because JRC indicated how they can potentially be involved in this project. But of course, then once only the proposal is selected, then you will be requested then to get into let's say discussions with JRC to fully define basically the involvement. And once the agreement is reached, then at the stage of grant agreement preparation, JRC will join the consortium. But at this stage, there is no need to contact them.
Good. Many thanks, Natalia. Many thanks to all participants for the questions. I think there are no more questions on this batch, and then we will pass to the last, but certainly not least batch, which is dedicated to enabling sustainable fisheries and aquaculture. We have here two topics. The first, number 10, is Sea-to-Fork transparency and consumer engagement. And number 11 is digital transition, supporting inspection and control for sustainable fisheries. The topics will be presented now, respectively, by my colleagues Nikos Dampoukas and Miguel Lizazzo, and then we will follow with questions and answers. Please, Miguel and Nikos, the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to talk about the Sea-to-Fork consumer engagement topic. Currently, there is a wealth of information already available on seafood supplies to guide consumers and retailers in their purchasing choice. However, so many times, the producers, processors, and suppliers do not find a way to demonstrate all the potential benefits of their seafood products. Origin, feed, welfare issues, processing, transport details are multiple and can be very complex. Additionally, the consumers often present an important lack of trust in seafood, especially farm seafood. Transparency, not only information in the seafood chain, is also fundamental to create trust and improve acceptance by the consumers. All in all, the level of awareness and demand among consumers and retailers is considered still far from sufficient to achieve a fully sustainable seafood sector and to efficiently promote consumption of the products with nutritional benefits and the lowest ecological and carbon footprint. Therefore, production, marketing, and consumption of seafood need radical changes in the understanding, transparency, and communication. In line with the European Green Deal, the Farm-to-Fork strategy, and the bioeconomy and blue growth strategies, the topic Sea-to-Fork transparency and consumer engagement aims to contribute to a fair, healthy, and environment-friendly seafood systems from the primary production until the consumption. Project results should contribute to all of the following outcomes: increase the consumer engagement to more sustainable and healthy seafood, identify the key bottlenecks to a fully transparent value chain, develop a lasting cooperation on data and information sharing, using innovative tools and including labeling and a life cycle analysis on environmental aspects, increase the public awareness and education, advance alternative solutions like short chain solutions, raw food, or traditional knowledge, and finally, promote growth and competitiveness of European sustainable aquaculture and seafood sector. In the next slide, you can see that this is an innovation action. Activities are expected to achieve a technology readiness level between 6 to 8 by the end of the project. The total indicative budget for the topic is 10 million, and the Commission estimates that an EU contribution of around 5 million per project would allow to cover the scope. Research in this topic will contribute to understanding and developing new approaches and tools to provide criteria and fully traceable records on how seafood is produced, processed, transported, and marketed. Innovations should provoke a change in the seafood consumption behavior and increase the visibility of sustainably fish or farm seafood. We encourage the cooperation at all levels with other seafood-related projects, international partners, as well as the co-creation among all the stakeholders and the use of social science and humanities disciplines. Thank you very much and best luck.
Good morning. I'm going to give you a short overview of the innovation action on the digital transition, supporting inspection and control for sustainable fisheries. In the next slide, I will speak about the policy context and the expected outcomes. In the European Union, fisheries are regulated by the Common Fisheries Policy, and one of the aims of the Common Fisheries Policy is to fight illegal, unreported, and unregulated fisheries, what we call IUU. There are currently control measures, but are only partially effective, particularly for small-scale fisheries, for recreational fisheries, and also for EU vessels fishing outside the EU. In order to be successful, the EU needs to have in place a technologically advanced and effective fisheries control system. From the projects that will be funded, we expect that they will advance the digital transition for fisheries inspection and control, that they will deliver innovative technological solutions, such as machine learning and artificial intelligence, that they will devise new monitoring and control strategies to stop IUU fishing and to promote sustainable fisheries in the EU and globally, that they will generate jobs in the EU requiring digital and high-tech know-how applied specifically to fisheries, and of course, that they will improve the professional skills and competencies of those who are working and of those who are being trained to work within the blue economy. And for this, we expect that projects will bring together marine scientists, maritime surveillance and control authorities, information technology specialists, and governance experts. In the next slide, I will talk about the scope of the topic. So we expect that the funded projects will tell us how to better detect illegal discards, how to improve weighting systems, how to develop a reporting system based on remote electronic monitoring on vessel, how to monitor and control small-scale, recreational, and long-distance fleet, how to mark electronically fishing gears, how to identify IUU activities, as well as fisheries products that stem from those IUU activities, how to promote data standards and data protection, how to access remotely fisheries data, how to develop automatic data exchange protocols, and how to assess compliance with technical requirements and measures. And for this topic, we foresee 10 million euros as EU contribution, and we expect that 5 million euros per each project are a reasonable amount to deliver the impacts foreseen. I would like also to highlight that the projects that will be funded under this topic, they should collaborate with other related projects funded under Horizon 2020. There are currently projects under Horizon 2020 that work on technological advancements in fisheries, but also other related projects that will be funded under Horizon Europe and also under the European Maritime and Fisheries Fund and its continuation, the European Maritime Fisheries and Aquaculture Fund. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Nikos and Miguel. And now we would like to take the questions. And we are pleased to have with us also colleagues from DG Mare, who importantly contributed also to the preparation of these topics. Let's see the questions that we have on Slido. There are no questions yet, so everything very clear. Well, one question, very good. Shall the digital tools assessed in the proposal cover only primary production, or shall they cover the whole value chain? Nikos. Nikos, would you like to?
Yes, thank you, Elisabetta, for giving the floor to this question. It seems it refers to the topic 0103, or it refers to the digital transformation of control in fisheries. I have to understand if this is a question to this topic.
I would like to invite also Susanna, if she can still eventually.
Thank you, Elisabetta. Indeed, this is a question for one of the topics I presented, but if I remember correctly, we already addressed it and answered it live. So, but again, I mean, I can repeat the reply. The reply is that it doesn't need to focus only on primary production, on agriculture production, but given the nature of agroecology that is cutting across the whole agri-food chain, it should also consider other parts of the chain. So this is already something that we covered in a previous, the similar question. I think it was the same one, but perhaps the person didn't hear the reply.
Okay, many thanks for this additional comment. I think Nikos would like to add some observation, and also our colleagues from DG Mare, they are most welcome.
Yes, thank you, Elisabetta. I will follow up from a previous question, a general questions about who are the policy makers we are referring, not only in the fisheries and aquaculture topics, but in all farm-to-fork topics. So particularly for the topic on the digital transition of fisheries control and inspection, I would like to highlight that policymakers are at the EU level, of course, DG Mare, and particularly also for this topic, the European Fisheries Control Agency that has a focal role in control of fisheries in the EU. And I would also like to, that you could include also regional and national authorities. There are local control authorities, national control authorities. So these are key policy makers, particularly for the topic on fisheries control. And maybe I would like to ask if DG Mare would like to say something on this.
Thank you, Nikos. No, just to confirm that indeed the expression used in the text of the horizon is governance experts, and when it comes to control, it's also including the experts also from member states, regional and central government levels, because of the competence of control also pertaining to the member states. So, indeed, thank you.
Good, many thanks. I see still one question for topic 3. So the repository should result as a digital platform design or as a narrative mainly. So would the colleagues from DG Agri like to reply to this question?
Thank you, Elisabetta. Yes, indeed, I think the reply is quite quick. I would say it's the two things. So we need, of course, a narrative explaining and justifying why the tools or the approaches selected are the ones that the project finds out about, but also, and it's explicitly indicated in the text of the topic, there is a need to compile an open repository of available digital tools to address the specific needs of agroecological farming systems. So it's both things, and it has to be, of course, as user-friendly as possible and as accessible as possible. So this is, both things are needed.
Many thanks. Then we are going back to Nikos and our fisheries and aquaculture topics, and we have a question on international cooperation. International collaboration is encouraged. Will international partners be more likely eligible for funding? Nikos.
Okay, thank you, Elisabetta. And you know that this is a question that applies to all our topics. So Horizon is open to the world. So international out of the EU and out of the associated countries are very welcome to participate, but some countries, some beneficiaries from countries that we consider that have a high GDP should come with their own funding, while there is a list of countries with lower GDP that are eligible to take funding from Horizon Europe. So it depends on the country where the interested beneficiary is based, if they will be funded by Horizon Europe or they have to come with their own funding.
Many thanks, Nikos, for a clarification. And now we are back, we have time, so we can also address some questions which are back to the previous presentations. And there is one question asking, can you expand on the overlapping between different destinations, digitalization and animal welfare, for example? Jean-Charles, would you like to comment on this?
I can try and contribute to the reply, not the only one. I think what we have there for the systems about the topic on animal welfare to zero is actually to build, create, or start from something already existing and expand and improve systems for monitoring of animal welfare. So it's very specific to animal welfare. Now, there may be initiatives in the world of digitization that are cross-cutting, and for which the applicants that will submit proposal may wish to interact with other existing initiatives, possibly topics that are will now be or are open under the Horizon Europe 21-22, but it may be also that existing projects could contribute to this. There is also an element maybe in animal welfare monitoring, if we look at monitoring at farm level, because we say in the topic animal welfare to zero, from farm to chain. At farm level, there could be also projects about precision livestock farming that help it do with sensors and systems to collect data. The idea is then to make sense of this and to bring it up to another and higher level. So this topic, in summary, this topic is not about digitalization, it's about systems for monitoring animal welfare with an element of digitization and possibly the opportunity and maybe the need to interact and cooperate with more cross-cutting initiatives and projects which are about digitization in agriculture in general, and even beyond. If we look at the chain for animal welfare from farm to slaughterhouse, for instance, transport and slaughterhouse, there may be also initiatives that are not restricted to agriculture per se, but also going down the chain. So there can be complementary initiatives, but we didn't point to specific ones in the topic animal welfare.
Many thanks, Jean-Charles. And I think Doris could also would like also to add something on this.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think it's a very good question. There's a differentiation between digitalization in the different destinations. And I think Jean-Charles made a very good explanation, and we can extend it maybe a little bit and also raise the interest in the destination 7, which will be subject this afternoon as well. In the other destinations, we have really, as Jean-Charles just explained, addressing specific topics which can be addressed or challenges with digitalization, for instance, related to agroecology or here to animal welfare. If we go then to destination 7, we have a more horizontal approach, for instance, digital markets in agri-food, so covering the whole sector and addressing questions which are more of cross-sectoral and more general nature related either to agri-food or to the food sector or to the environment or bioeconomy. And that will be discussed in Destination 7 this afternoon. We can even go one step further and look also to Horizon Europe Cluster 4, which may also be quite relevant for digitalization in the agriculture sector. But there it's rather the focus on technology development. For instance, smart contracts are of relevance for several sectors, manufacturing, agri-food, and so on. And there the focus is on developing the technology further while in cluster 6, we have the technologies in specific contexts. Here, for instance, agri-food sector, and also considering the socioeconomic context. Still, in cluster 4, we may have some pilots in the agriculture sector to test the technologies developed. So that is the main differentiations. As a rule of thumb, there is no sharp differentiation between that, but it's a rule of thumb guiding the applicants that we say, okay, destination 7 in cluster 6 has a more horizontal relevance for digitalization in the agri-food sector. In the other destinations, we have specific questions which can be addressed with digital technologies. And in cluster 4, we have the more technology scope of cross-sectoral relevance.
Many thanks, Doris, for this clarification. Very clear. If there are no, yes, there is still one question for Nikos. Does this call include imported aquaculture products in the scope?
Yes, thank you, Elisabetta. This topic, the 10th topic, indeed includes imported seafood, including also imported aquaculture food. It includes both EU farmed, EU produced, and out of the EU produced seafood. For the EU produced seafood, we know that it's produced with the highest hygienic, social, and environmental standards, and we want the tools to show this and make them more competitive in the global market, while for the seafood we import, and it's a lot, it's the majority in terms of biomass of the food we eat in the EU comes from outside the EU, and for this seafood, we want to make sure that the consumers understand what they consume in EU, and also that they have they have acceptable standards in the production. That's why we particularly highlight that we expect co-creation with stakeholders, including from third countries that export seafood to the EU, in order to have a level playing field with the EU-produced seafood, and in order to have a consumer, to assure consumers that what we import and we eat is safe and nutritious.
Many thanks, Nikos. Very clear. I don't see any further questions, so I would like to thank all the participants for all this interest in this session, and I will give the floor to Kerstin for the conclusions.
Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot, Elisabetta. Yeah, there is not a lot that remains to be said. So thanks a lot first for the audience, so for making this a very interactive session and learning more about the different specificity of the topics. And we hope this will really lead to the preparation of some very good and excellent proposals. Then, of course, I would like to say a big thanks to all the speakers for their concise presentations. This really made it very palpable of what we're looking for in this context. And as stated at the beginning and also throughout this session, please don't forget that if there are any unanswered questions, please send them to the Research Inquiry Service. They will then be addressed in written. And at the very end of this, remains me only to say good luck for the preparation of the proposals, and see you back in one of the other sessions maybe, or at some other time. So I think it was also mentioned in between and by Elisabetta, whom I also thank for this active co-moderation, that there will be the second part of this session. So we've covered only the first part, but the part related to food systems and to international will be covered with the additional topics in the afternoon sessions. So it's not yet time for bon appetit, but almost. I wish you an easily digestible lunch after having digested all these challenging topics this morning. So thanks a lot and bye-bye.